Every year-end, I return to the state where I was born and raised. I enjoy Christmas and other festivities, and then spend the holidays there. When I do this, I usually stay in my old room at my mother's house. However, it has turned into a mini studio apartment mixed with a messy bedroom over the last year. So this time, I was accommodated in the room where my brother and his girlfriend used to sleep, since he had recently moved out. And anticipating your question, no, I don't have any mental problems. I've never used drugs, and I haven't consumed alcohol for 10 years. Well, now that I'm settled in and used to it, life is flowing normally. I've met up with a few friends from childhood and college, and also a girl we used to hang out with occasionally. But that was only until I got involved again, more than I would have liked, but that's not the point. In the second week of January, I started hearing a baby-like cry in the early hours of the morning, but since the room I was in overlooked the neighbor's yard, a house with children and other people enjoying their vacation, I assumed the sound was coming from there and went to sleep. A few days went by. I heard the cries softly, and occasionally I had the impression that I was inside the house, but I ignored it until one night when I was with a friend I mentioned, I heard it again more intensely, which made me wake up. She saw my concern, asked if something had happened, and I explained that I couldn't sleep with the baby's cries filling every room in the house. She looked at me, grimaced, and called me back to sleep, saying that there was no child crying, and really with her awake, I couldn't hear anything anymore. I reluctantly accepted the invitation, but ended up falling asleep again. 1 week before I was due to leave at breakfast, she asked my mother how she slept with the baby crying next to her, who seemed to be inside the house every night. I had almost gone crazy in those 2 months. Imagine her, a lady in her 60s. She said she didn't hear any crying, that what really bothered her was the sound of dogs barking when the garbage truck passed by. But that was in the afternoon, when her soap operas were on. That same day, I went out to say goodbye and ended up getting home late, around 3 in the morning. Since I couldn't sleep, I decided to search for something on Netflix. While I was looking for a movie, I felt a chill on the back of my neck that I usually only feel when I'm in the presence of something supernatural. It's an instinct that accompanies me, something very unique, my body, mind, and soul saying, "Be alert! There's something in the air." I found it strange, because apart from the first part of my childhood and adolescence, as an adult, I haven't had any more experiences like that at my mother's house, until suddenly, the cry invaded the room and also my mind. I opened a window to see if it was a neighbor's, but his house was completely dark. So far, it wasn't there. I left the room, walked down the hallway to the kitchen, and the noise kept happening. I decided to go back, and as I walked, I noticed that the sound was also getting louder. At that point, I was particularly determined to identify what it was. I didn't close the door when I left, but I realized that it was now closed. When I put my hand on the doorknob, it was as cold as a winter night, and when I opened it, I found the TV on, which was illuminating a blanket on my bed. I looked at it for a few seconds, trying to identify what it was. Again, it was warm, so it wasn't a building or a roof, something that could be seen when I got up. There was no way the TV was on. I used the infrared on my cell phone, I have a Xiaomi, to turn it on and off. The blanket was a sky blue color I had never seen in the room, in the house, and it was from it that the cry was coming. I approached to see what was rolled up, foot by foot, and when I got close, I saw a white light. It resembled the silhouette child of about 2 or 3 years old. But if I said I saw a real child, I would be lying. It was a pure light without eyes or a mouth, but somehow it was from her that the crying was coming. I must have taken another 1 or 2 steps, and when I got very close, my body froze. As if time had stopped, I could not recover or move forward. When I realized the child's cry had also stopped. At that moment, the blanket began to unroll by itself, and the child of light levitated towards me, still motionless. I felt an immeasurable peace, by the way, and my body became light. Extremely light until I simply passed out. I woke up the next morning with my mother, asking if everything was okay, if something had happened, if the baby had slept on the couch on the first floor. I didn't understand how I got there. I don't remember going down. When I went up, the TV in the room was on, the window was open. Well, my cell phone was not there under the blanket. In the nights that followed, until I left, I didn't hear or feel anything else. My mother called me recently. She found out that a girlfriend had lost her baby spontaneously at the end of the year, 2 months before I arrived. It would have been their first child. I don't think that what I saw, what I heard, was my nephew or nephew. Could it be related? Yes, but I can't say for sure. I don't really know what happened, what it was, but it was very peculiar. I haven't talked to my brother about it yet. I'm waiting for him to talk to me, but it's not about this kind of experience. He always runs away. In 2009, I was planning to spend a few days in Rio de Janeiro, since a year before I had survived an attempted robbery, in which I was shot twice, and so I decided to take a vacation to enjoy life, this new opportunity one had. At the time, Airbnb didn't exist, and my cousin let me stay at his house. I was going to stay there for a week. It was a small 2-bedroom apartment, where he and his girlfriend, a political scientist, lived in an old building in the Botafogo neighborhood. The elevator had a golden safety railing, outdated but charming. The atmosphere of the building could certainly be compared to a horror movie, since it was just the two of them living there, and one of the bedrooms was his girlfriend's study. That's where they put me. Up until then, there was nothing unusual in the apartment. Small but cozy for 2 or even 4 people, as long as everyone respected each other's space. They had 2 cats, and they told me right away that I didn't need to worry, because they wouldn't get into the room where I would be staying. I said it was okay if I came in, that even though I was a dog lover, I had nothing against cats. They looked at each other in awkward silence, but they didn't say anything at all. Today I realized that it was strange, a warning of what was to come, but at the time, I hadn't paid attention. I had left ES the night before and taken the bus trip. I was almost physically dead. I didn't sleep during the day to make the most of it, and I got to know part of the city, its tourist attractions, but I was looking forward to the night to fall asleep. On the first night, even though it was cool there and they'd given me a fan, I closed the door but didn't lock it. I just locked it, took off my shirt, and decided to sleep in just boxer shorts. My cousin's girlfriend wasn't gonna come in there, and when she left to go to the bathroom or eat something, I would put on the shirt that was on the study bench. Because I was tired and had slept badly on the bus, I simply closed my eyes and passed out. When I woke up the next day, I saw that my shirt was on the floor, some books were in a mess, and the door was ajar. I immediately deduced that my cousin's girlfriend didn't like me putting my shirt under the counter, and that she would justify her gesture. It was their house, not mine, and even though, in my defense, the shirt wasn't sweaty or anything, it was a shirt that if I needed to wear it, I would put on quickly, and it was even folded. When I left the room around 8 a.m., they were both having breakfast. I said good morning and went to the bathroom. While I was doing my business, I noticed some scratches on the inside of my left thigh. They weren't deep, almost painless, but they were there. I took a shower, imagining that it had been the cats marking their territory. And since I was tired, I didn't feel anything at all. I kept this incident to myself. And when I saw them after my shower, they only asked me if I slept well and if I had any problems. I said I had slept well, passed out, thanked them for the place, and assured them I was ready to climb Corcovado while doing handstands. Everyone laughed, and my cousin's girlfriend, Andrea, almost unable to contain some specific curiosity, asked again, "Are you sure everything is okay?" In my head, I understood it as an indirect message about the shirt on the counter, and I told her I was so tired the night before that I simply put my clothes under her books, apologized, and that it wouldn't happen again. I acknowledged that it was her room and office, and stressed that she could come in whenever she wanted, just knock first if possible, so as not to create any embarrassment, and that she must have seen me shirtless that morning when she came in to give book, and it was not my intention to disrespect either of them. At that moment, there was once again an awkward silence between them, and an exchange of glances that said a lot without either of them opening their mouths or making a single sound, until Andrea said that she hadn't entered the room and that there was no problem with my gesture, but that neither she nor my cousin, Arthur, had entered. It was my second day in Rio de Janeiro. I didn't go into the incident, and I realized that one of the cats had come in, knocked off my shirt, scattered the books on the counter, and scratched me. We had a good day. In fact, we stayed at the beach most of the morning, and in the afternoon, we went to eat at a traditional restaurant in the region. When night came, I took off my shirt again. This time I put it next to me. I was sleeping on a single mattress on the floor, and to prevent the cats from coming in again, when I closed the door, this time I gave them the key. I told Arthur and Andrea that if anything happened, they could just knock and call me. I wasn't as tired as the night before, and around 2 in the morning, I heard the key that was in the door falling to the floor. It was a wooden block. I could hear the floor, and even if I was in a deep sleep, I would hear it. I imagined that it was one of the two trying to get in to get something, and they didn't want to wake me up. I opened the door, didn't put on my shirt, and went to see what it was. If it was one of them, the apartment was dark. Only the living room light was on. The door to their bedroom was closed. I didn't see the cats around the house. Still skeptical and not understanding what was going on, I went to the bathroom, and after urinating, I looked in the mirror and saw that just below my chest, near my abdomen, there were thin scratches like the ones on my thigh, but one of them was deeper with a slight trace of blood. At that moment, there was no more doubt, and I had the idea that perhaps once again in my life, I was dealing with the supernatural. If you, the reader, don't know or have read any other stories of mine, in short, I've had these experiences since I was a child. So before you also play the skeptic or say that I used some drug, try reading them in the order of the posts. At the time, I only drank whiskey occasionally. My only drug, my only addiction, has always been women with looks similar to those of actress Eva Green. Women who seem to have walked barefoot through hell and, during this adventure, even lit a cigarette in a river of fire or on some condemned person who was spontaneously combusting. If you find this experience hard to believe, read it as fiction. Well, I wasn't going to wake them both up. Until then, only my brother and mother and a few friends knew that I had the ability to see, feel, and hear things. I went back to my room, grabbed my shirt and went to the living room, turned on the TV, and tried to find something to entertain my mind. The hours passed, and at almost 4 in the morning, falling asleep but not wanting to sleep, I saw a woman in the balcony window. There was no way there was a woman in the balcony window. It was on the 8th floor, and although there was a Spider-Woman in the Marvel Universe, in Rio de Janeiro, even though it is a unique land, there was no way she could have gone up there. Having had other experiences with the supernatural, I learned that under no circumstances should you stare at something, and if you do so out of curiosity, do not allow it to see you. That's what I did. I pretended to be demented until a certain point, knowing that she was there. And for those of you who want a description, she was an extremely pale woman, 60 or 65 years old, with gray hair and extremely deep and empty eyes with no facial expression. She was wearing a kind of pompous black robe, very common in the 70s and 80s. I looked in the corner of the TV, and it was almost 5 in the morning, and the day was dawning. I was waiting for my cousin or Andrea to wake up, and then I heard the sound of the window glass scratching. No matter how much I tried to ignore it, I felt blood running down from the recent scratches on my chest in the same synchrony as she scratched the glass. I could lie here and say that I remained calm, even though I am a grown man who is 1.90 m tall, strong, etc., but that doesn't gain anything. I got up immediately and went and knocked on the bedroom door, calling for my cousin. As I describe it, I can feel the air getting heavy like it had been that morning. While I was knocking on the door like a madman, I heard the balcony window opening and the temperature dropping as if I had opened a refrigerator. With each punch on the door and the delay my cousin took, the temperature dropped even more until he opened in fright. I just went into the room. I didn't care if they were naked or something like that. At the time, I didn't know the rituals to protect myself from supernatural things, so I acted on impulse. Andrea was awake, sitting on the bed. The cats that were with him in the room began to meow aggressively in the direction of the hallway, as if they wanted to scare something away, ready for a fight. The presence this woman disappeared. My cousin didn't hesitate when I told him what had happened, so much so that he closed the door and didn't want to look in the hallway. I showed them the scratches on my thigh and chest, and they were amazed that it had gotten to that point. When I asked them how it had gotten to that point, they said that they had been living there for 6 months, and every now and then in the early hours of the morning, they had also seen the same woman with the same description, and that it was becoming common for Andrea's books to fall on the floor in the morning. The TV remote that should be on the couch was also on the floor, and there were sounds of glass being scratched in the early hours of the morning. But instead of 4 in the morning, it was usually 3. That same day, I bought my outbound ticket early and went to Victoria. They were waiting for a year's rent, so they wouldn't have to pay a fine at the time. And according to both of them, they were not at risk with the cats. A few years later, we talk about it again. And now, knowing what to do in these situations, I told them about other experiences I had had. I never really understood why she attacked me or why she attacked them. They didn't go into the depths of the situation. I also didn't have the courage at the time, and this mystery, supernatural experience, remains in the air.